Hello and welcome to Trapped Emotions Podcast Episode 2. I'm your host, Andrew.
My name's Tyler. I'm your other host.
And, we're going to get into some deep topics today. It's going to get a little deeper this week than it was last week. So check it out. Tyler's going to read a little something and we're going to go from there.
All right, so I'm going to pick up where we left off last time. So last time we left off on part 1. So this is part 2, which we start talking about. I've been looking for answers. I've been looking for a change. I'm surrounded by ghosts and stuck in an internal torment of what I feel is survivor's guilt. I'm in a fucking dark space and I'm haunted by a man that's stuck in the mirror. I don't know who it is. I don't know this face anymore. I am sick in the mind, waking up from whispers in the night. The demons speak like let's be friends again. We are the ones who are always here. We love you. They say the shadows are the only things that ever listen when I speak. I'm feeling worthless. I have a lack of emotions and no empathy. So tell me, what is it that you expect of me? This makes me insane, and is this a product of trauma? Walking the thin line, so I become what they want of me. I am my own worst enemy. My needs, I'm killing them. Shouldn't believe in me at all. The brokenness of a sick mind in a dark place. I'm asking for angels to appear. Where is my guardian angel? All I see is diamond flooded demons, which is from Lupe Fiasco, right? Like a hitman sitting outside of heaven waiting for God to appear. The fear is growing and I pray, come find me. Death is the only thing that's on the tip of the tongue. A product of a crack epidemic, perhaps. I'm out of my fucking mind. I'm cursed. Am I backtracking? I feel so lost. I don't know if I'm making it. I can see it in my eyes. I've heard, you're lucky, bro. You made it past the age of 21. I get it, but it's a struggle to stay alive when everyone else is dead. I feel stuck in a prison with no bars in my mind. I want these voices to get out of my head, but they grow louder and louder. They say, don't you wish you were dead? Is it okay if I start crying? But what if you can't cry and just end up laughing? So close to just ending it, you don't even know. On the outside, I'm so put together. Look, the shoes even match the shirt. The shoes even match the shirt. He's so on point, but I'm dead on the inside. And that would take us to part 3, but we'll not later.
Dang, bro. So that's like deep. Like, that's super deep. And from what you read, man, I can tell you were in a real dark place. And, being friends with you for 23 years now, I've never really heard you talk that deep about what you were going through, what you were feeling. Which is why when we started talking on the phone, after you were posting these things on Facebook, like I was really interested in talking more about you because, we have been like this, since high school. And I mean, I was worried about you, and it triggered things in me, it gave me realizations of, possibly, the dark place that I was at. And, so I was interested in like seeing where you were at. So like, where were you at, bro? Where were you at in your mind? Like really, like honestly, where were you at?
So honestly, like, I had started writing this and like, I started writing these things and like in the beginning, right? So before post 1, I had put on there on the social media, I was like, I'm so sick and tired of people dying and like they're not reaching out for help, right? And I said that and I said, I'm gonna do this 7-part series or whatnot. Like I'm gonna do a whole series and like maybe you guys will understand, right? Well, and like you're the only person to know this, right? But like, I mean, realistically, what we're reading is a fucking suicide note, You know what I mean? Like that's really what it is. Like I felt so deep and dark inside, and like, you know, when I'm talking about like I have no more empathy and I have no more emotional connection, like, you know, like I was really struggling mentally, right? Like I just wanted to get on the phone and call like my grandma, right? I just wanted to call Terry. I just wanted to talk to like I was just stuck, you know what I mean? And like, and I felt like I was reaching out for people, and yet I felt so alone because like, you know, and like, you know, like I was in a relationship at the time, and like I even kept telling that girl like, yo, like I'm dying, I'm not okay, and like I'm really struggling mentally, and like she just kept making it about her, and like at the same time I wasn't communicating properly, right? Because communication is key, and like I wasn't really communicating like, no, like I'm really serious when I'm talking about like I want to end it all, right? And like, so like I started making plans, right? I was like, I'm gonna write this part, this series, and then I'm out, right? I'm gonna check out, right? And like I started looking for a good home for Pickles. Like I care where my cat's at, right? And like you had called me, and it goes a little bit more deeper than what you even know, because like we had a conversation, but it wasn't the conversation you and I had, right? But that conversation was like, oh shit, somebody else is struggling, right? Because you were like, yo, I'm really struggling with these situations, da 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 da, and you were like, bro, let's get this, like let's do something together, let's get doing this, right? And like, but it wasn't even that. It was, you had shared some stuff on there, and like it triggered some old memories of me. Like I remember like as a kid, like, you know, because like as a kid, like I used to like sit in my grandma's house and cry, right? And I'd be like, you know, I just want my mom, I just want my dad, and like nobody was fucking around. You know what I mean? Like my mom wasn't there, and like I would blame her for not being there. Like, you know, where the fuck are you? But at the end of the day, like she was, you know, going through her own shit, and like I wasn't the best of kid, right?
Yeah, we all know that.
Yeah, you know that, right?
High school, you know
Yeah,
that.
so like I wasn't, I don't know, man. Like she ended up sending me to my grandparents, but it was even before that. Like even as a kid, right? Like she was working all these jobs and shit, and like I never saw her. She was going through her own shit, and like I was really struggling. So you had said some shit that triggered those thoughts of like, damn, I remember being a child just wishing I had my mom, and I wish I had my dad, and I have to be here to try to make sure that somebody else doesn't, right? And like that's actually kind of what changed it. So the rest of these parts, I actually sat down and rewrote the endings to all of them, and like was like, okay, well, I got to get out of this dark space, and like I have to fix something, right? Because I gave up, right? Like I gave up. It was like I'm not gonna fix anything. Like I'm just gonna end it. And like I made all the plans. Like I felt like I was going through motion, going through life. You know what I mean? And like that was the whole fucking point. You know what I mean? So I mean that's kind of in a sense where I was at.
Like, I've never went through actual thoughts of wanting to end it myself, at least, you know. But I mean, I knew when I was in addiction, there were so many nights that I just wanted to indulge, you know, in whatever drug I was doing that night, enough just hoping that I wouldn't wake up the next day, you know, and just thinking like, if I don't wake up, it's okay, you know. And I remember a couple times when I was so shocked when I did wake up. And it actually gave me like a new lease on life. And I really thought, like, Andrew, is this really how you want to go out? Is this really how you want it to end? And the fact is no, I was just in a dark space and I didn't know where to go from there. I was trapped. You know, I was trapped in my emotions and my thoughts. You know, like you said, the mental prison. You know, I was in that mental prison for years, 13 years. And I didn't know where to turn. You know, it's just like, you know, one bad thing after another just kept happening, and like it's like you get used to it to a certain extent, but at the same time you want it to change, but you don't know how to change it, and you take no action to change. It's like, I remember thinking, man, like I just want a different life, but then I'm like, how can I live anything different than what I'm living now? Like, I don't know how to. I never knew from an early age, from my early teenage years. I was a man. I was doing man stuff. I wasn't, playing with toys and everything. Like, I was doing grown adult stuff. Things that were very toxic and harmful to my development as an early teen, and that's all I knew. So I was stuck in that cycle of just over and over again, trying to thinking I wanted to fix it, but not trying to do anything about it. And that's the essence, that's the embodiment of what we're talking about in this podcast, is those trapped emotions. Because the fact is you think I told anyone what I was thinking when I was going through that? You think I told people, hey man, I'm really struggling, I want to change? No. I just kept sitting around just hoping that something would be different than that. Like, I'd wake up and I'd just feel different the next day. And it never came, until I got to that point where I felt so much pain that there was no other choice but to change. Which is when, everybody knows, I got sober right after my daughter was born. And, I've been sober ever since, and like that was the thing that I needed to push me to a better life, and like I've said, I've struggled with different things since I've been sober, but the easiest way for me to relate to this is to go back to my addiction and being stuck there and just not wanting to live, not caring if I lived or died, and I feel like so many of us go through it. We just don't talk about it, especially men. Men feel that, I need to be tough. I need to be strong. I can't talk about, how I'm hurting over, my dad not being there, or, my mom abandoning me, or, getting treated like I wasn't worthy enough of my parents' love when I was a kid, Like, we don't talk about that. We're told to tough through it. And fuck, man, like, it always comes back. Years later, it took days later, months later, weeks later, years later. It continues to come back until we address it. Which, when we started talking on the phone, like, that's when I really realized that the struggles that I was having in sobriety, which is me doing exactly what I wasn't doing when I was in addiction, was I wasn't addressing them. I wasn't talking about them. I was just waking up the next day hoping that I would feel different and that I would change without actually putting the action in. And it doesn't work like that, And for you to come out and write them parts, especially this second part, talk about your thoughts of wanting to, commit suicide, like that's bold. But who doesn't, who talks about that? Who really comes out and says that, wanting to change, So I respect you for that, bro, for real.
I mean, I the craziest thing though was like, I kept talking about it. Like, I was talking to people about it. Like, I would constantly tell people, I'd be like, yo, I'm not okay. I'm not okay. Mentally, I'm not okay. And like, I don't know. And I talk a lot about survivor's guilt, right? And like, and I hold a lot of this guilt inside of like, man, like, so like even further on the next couple of things we talk about this, it's like, like even in my profession and like everything like that, like I'll have people that'll be like, oh man, like you really helped me change my life and shit. And I'm like, that's cool, but I didn't help the people that I should have, right? And I hold that guilt with me. And like when I talk about like being haunted by ghosts and shit, like I talk about like that's what I mean. Is like I feel like I walk with these people and I feel like I can't let go. And I always and like this is bullshit. Like I always bullshit about grief and loss, right? Because I'll always tell people, and you know this because we've had this conversation too. Like I'll always tell people like, oh, you only miss the people you love for your own selfish reasons, and when you let go of the selfishness, you can then grieve. That's such cliche and bullshit, right? Because like I still hold on to those demons, And like I still hold on to that guilt and that shame of like, why am I here and they're not, right? And like it really fucks with me. So like, at the end of the day, like I'm sitting there and I'm trying to explain to people like, yo, like I'm not okay. I'm really struggling. And it wasn't, and like in a sense, I was going through the motions, you know? So I'm going through all these motions. I'm doing all these things. I'm going to work. I'm, you know, I'm taking care of my cat. The only thing I'm doing correctly, right? Everything else is just, it's on autoplay, right? And we don't talk about this. Men don't talk about this, right? Where it's like, man, like I'm really struggling. And a lot of it is also too because like I'm a toxic person in relationships a lot, right? Not all the time, right? Which is probably a lie, right? Right? But majority of the time, like like I have these selfish characteristics that make me a toxic person, right?
Mm.
So I really struggle with connecting to people to where I just stopped, right? I was just like, fuck all this. I'm done talking to people. I'm done trying to like communicate. Like I just didn't want to do it anymore. And like that's where this took me. And like I don't know, like that phone call you and I had was it was kind of like one of those things. And like I hung up with you and like I just started crying. I was in my truck. I just started bawling, man. And like I finally went in the house. It's like my cat needed to eat, right? And he's my pride and joy. So went in there to feed him, and like I remember I had called you and was like, start a podcast, right? And like at the end of the day, like I don't know if people wanted to hear this shit. I still don't, right? Like I'm not even doing this for anybody. Like I'm doing this because the one thing that was over and over again and consistently in my life is people talk about like I'm never vulnerable, right? I don't talk about these. I'll teach you how to do these, right? Mm-hmm. I'll tell you how to do these things. And like I'll do all these things, but like I'm not really talking about the deep dark pain that's inside. We have these steps that we go through in recovery. Mm. And like even then, like I had wrote a bunch of shit out, but like I never really went deep with it. And like there's a lot of shit that like I just am like, oh, forget about it. Oh, forget about it. A lot of stuff that I'm just like, oh, forget about it. I push it aside and pretend like it doesn't bother me. And it does. Until eventually, like, bro, I just had an emotional breakdown. And I felt like nobody was there because like every time I kept reaching out to people, I just kept hearing, you gotta be okay, let's do this. And like nobody, and then like people would say to me like, man, are you okay? And I would be like, yeah, I'm fine. And I started saying I was fine because I was like, you don't fucking care anyway. All you care about is this going to be done on time? Am I going to do this right? Am I doing this? Am I doing that? Like, I'm doing all that shit, right? Am I struggling on the inside? Absolutely, right? And I'm telling people, like, yo, I'm not okay. To the point where eventually I'm like, all right, well, nobody gives a fuck, right? So, I mean, that's where I was going.
And I think, like, a big part of, like, when we're expressing these things to other people, the reason that, it's taken so lightly is because, once again, back to us being men, and maybe not just men, just people in general, like everyone is supposed to handle their shit themselves, men, women, like it's, I know when someone comes up to me with some real deep shit, it's like, whoa, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. I'll be okay. Like what do you do? You don't really have the answer, unless you've went through it. And I mean, like, who goes? Not, I'm sure there's a lot of people that you talk to that haven't been where you were mentally, So what? It's like, it's hard to find for people that are really struggling with those deep emotions. It's hard for them to have an outlet to, properly handle those emotions, like, and if they do talk about it, they're not taken seriously. Oh, like he's just having a bad day, he'll be all right. But they don't understand that sometimes, we deal with things like this over and over mentally, I mean, I can like you said, like reading in that, your part two about, putting on this, mask basically of, who you want people to see you actually dying on the inside. And that's what I would do. Everyone's like, oh, you're always so happy. And I go home and I lay down in bed at night and I would have all these thoughts going through my head like, oh man, I need to change this. I need to do something better. Like, I'm sick of living like this. And that's where I was, with the issues I was having right before, we started talking I remember like I'd have a good day. I go to work, I interact with my customers, I'm always so happy. I always have a smile on my face. But the second I'm alone, man, all that garbage creeps into my head. And it's just like, where do I go? Where do I go? Who do I talk to about this? Like, if I talk to anyone about this, number one, they're going to think I'm sick and twisted. Number two, they're not going to be able to relate because I feel that the feelings and thoughts and emotions that I have going on in me are ones that not too many people have. And so who am I going to reach out to? And that's why when you mentioned about having a podcast, with us discussing this, like, I was like, wow, how many people can benefit from seeing two guys who most people think live these perfect lives because, we got clean and, got good jobs and, handle our own now. Like, who would think that these guys are going through that stuff or struggling with this stuff? Well, here we are, letting people know, like, man, we all struggle. We're all vulnerable. We all need to talk about this, and these are things that, can be hard sometimes. But I'll tell you what, in the last 2.5 months or so since we started talking about this, I honestly don't think I felt better. Just releasing those emotions, releasing them into the universe, man, because like the universe wants the best for us, and if we sit here with these negative thoughts, negative emotions going through our head all the time, at least for me, I shouldn't say we, let me use I statements. When I sit here with all these negative emotions and thoughts going in my head, guess what? Negativity begets more negativity. Like, I'm not releasing it. I'm not letting it go. I'm internally creating more negativity within me. So when I let it go, when I speak about it, free. It's just like they say, secrets keep us sick. I had things when I first got sober, that I wrote down and I told you. You were the person I talked to about these things that I've done. There was something I said, and I remember you were the first person I ever told. And that was, 4 or 5 years, since it happened. I never told anyone else. And the funny thing is like, I tell people openly about that now. It's not negative to me. Number one, because I've released it. It's not who I am anymore. It's not who I'm ever going to be in the future because I've handled it. I've discussed it. I've moved past it. I've changed internally. I'm not that same person that did that. So if I wouldn't have talked about it and released it, it's still eating at me every single day. And that's the beautiful part that we've really learned, I think, in talking, having these long phone conversations about our feelings, bro. It's like it doesn't have to bother us anymore. Once we get it out, we can let it go. Move on.
Absolutely. And I think for me, like, it was kind of cool, like, how this all came to be, because, like, you were going through some shit, and, like, Justin was going through some shit, too. And, like, that kind of helped put everything together. And, like, I didn't feel alone, because I was like, well, somebody's listening. And, like, the response back, right? Like, even from the last episode, the amount of people that shared it and everything like that, like, knowing that, like, man, like, doing something, right? And, like, and right now, like, I'm sure everybody that's gonna watch this, like, they can see it within me. Like, I'm nervous as fuck, right? Like, I really am, because I only shared this suicide part with you 4 hours before we did this, because, like, I didn't want to just drop it on you in the middle of this. But, like, I had got a text message from a girl, that we go way back, right? So like when I was or some shit. You know, and I love her dearly and I respect her opinion. And like I mean I pretend like I don't and I tell people I don't, but like I do, right? And like the one thing she had said was like, you know, I'm glad that you're being open, like more honest, right? And that kind of resonated with me, and that's kind of why this all kind of came out of like what this really meant, right? Um, you know, and going into part 3 is where we'll dive deeper into that. But I kind of wanted to explain that like at the end of the day, man, this was actually a suicide letter, and like if this starts triggering anybody as we're going through these episodes, episodes 6 and 7 is where like I actually talk about healing, right? So I don't want everybody to think that like I guess that I don't want it to come out like we're just sitting here rambling on for no fucking reason about these emotions. Like there is a point, right? And like we are gonna show and talk about how to overcome them. But I kind of wanted to really make this episode like a suicide awareness, because at the end of the day, man, like I was gonna, I thought to myself like I have a 38 and I can specialize that delivery right to my face, right? And like that was the plan. So I know that there's people out there that are really struggling that don't want to talk about that, because I was one of them, right? And like I wanted to make like I just kind of wanted to bring that out, because like at the end of the day, like I think that's the whole point of the is like, man, we're all struggling, but we don't have to be alone. And I'm very accessible, right? Like anybody can contact me and like I'll talk to them and stuff like that. Because I mean, at the end, and that's the other part too, is at the end of the day, like I am a certified counselor, right? Like a master's degree in this shit, and like so it doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter what's going on. Sometimes people are really struggling in life, and when they try to talk about it, they don't feel validated and they don't feel like anybody's listening. And like I promise you, we're not alone, and like we can recover. And like it's not that we can't recover, right? Because this goes beyond drug addiction. This is mental health right now, right? And like when the world comes crumbling down, we can get up from it. And like yes, we need people. And like I'm happy that like I got you guys, and I'm internally grateful that people give a fuck on what we have to say, right? And like I hope that we can help people. Like
Definitely. It's so important to know that like you have someone there. And before we wrap this up, I just want to share a brief story of something that happened to me today. I had this guy call me who I hadn't talked to for months, and he's like, "Thank God you answered, man." He said, "I was getting ready to go out and have a drink. This guy hasn't drank for months, and I answered, and I didn't really say much. All I had to do was listen to him. He just wanted someone to talk to, like get this off his chest. And he said, "Thank you for answering." So I don't think people really understand how important it is to just listen. Listen to your friends, listen to your loved ones. If you see something going on that may worry you or concern you, man, sit down and talk to them. Let them know, hey, you can be comfortable with me, and we can talk about whatever. I won't judge you. I'm here for you. I love you. And I think that that's a big part, is just letting people know that you care. Being there for people, even when you can't always be there for yourself. And so with that being said, we thank all y'all for tuning in to episode 2. We got episode 3 coming next week, and we're gonna delve more into this. Like I said, we're gonna get a little deeper into these emotions that we're going through, and a few episodes we're gonna get into the healing process. And I mean, we'll still talk a little bit about the healing throughout these first few episodes too. So stay tuned. Like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you all.
Real quick. I want everybody to, like, I do want to say, like, I am in a much better mind space, right? I'm moving to a different apartment that's like actually bigger for me and my cat, right? And like, I'm okay with just being with me and my cat, right? And like at the end of the day, like I talked to you, I talked to Justin, and like I'm, I'm back into the swinging like normal life, and like so before the phone calls start happening after this airs, right? I'm not gonna off myself today, but if you are thinking about it, please, please reach out and call somebody beside a hotline number, and I'll put that in the description. I'll put that number in the description. But yeah, I just want to say that. So if you are thinking, you are struggling, man, you feel like the world's alone, I promise you. If nothing else, I'm here for you. If you need anything in any way, shape, or form, I don't know how I can be of help, but I don't want people to have to be stuck in that mental torment that I was in. Yeah, most definitely like this video. Subscribe to our channel. We are definitely going to go deep in some of these emotions. We're going to do some wild and crazy shit. I love everybody, and I appreciate the amount of support that we're getting.
Yes, thank you so much. Trapped Emotions Podcast, episode 2. We out. Peace.